Welcome to today's Snap session, Leasing During Social Distancing and Beyond. I'm Suzanne Silverman, Editorial Director of Multi-Housing News, and I'm talking with John Doyle, co-founder of Tour24. We are recording this session, and it will be available for later viewing. In addition, we're going to leave some time at the end to answer your questions, but please feel free to submit them at any time during the webinar. Contact free has become a necessary mantra as apartment operators take steps to protect the health of their residents and employees. But maintaining occupancies means continuing to welcome prospective residents into communities. John, let's talk about incorporation of virtual tours into this strategy, as well as some ways to really capitalize on the technology.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. I really appreciate everybody taking their time out today. We're super excited to have so many people attending. I know it's a crazy world out there, so we're excited to kind of talk about this new trend that really addresses what's going on in the world that can really affect how you all are operating on a day-to-day basis with your properties. So yeah, and I think we can really talk a little bit about how the current pandemic has really kind of pushed the evolution forward in self-guided tours. And so, as we know, leasing apartments has always been traditionally a contacted interaction between a leasing agent and a prospective resident. And so that's been the model for years and years. And as technology has evolved, we've really worked at keeping pace with that. How can we use the technology to market and to fill our vacant units as they become available? So obviously with the advent of the internet, the big push at first was then to get our virtual tours online. So somebody could go to a property website and view the really nice pictures and guide through the property, look at the pool, look at the gym, look at the rooftop decks, and then the different model units that are available. So really taking a tour virtually has been, since the advent of the internet, so for the past 20 years or so, an additional way. And I would really say in the past couple of years in particular, there's been this trend in terms of with the Gen Z generation as well as millennials all around self-service and how can I take that one step further. Yeah, to look at a property, to look at a community online is great, but we all know that we put the nicest pictures up there on the internet. And so it's been interesting to really see the survey results that we have done. I think the latest survey that came out was that around 80% of people want to actually view a prospective living space in person. So it's not enough just to have the ability to view online, but it's really, I want to go and not only do I want to go and view this online, I actually want to go and look at this property at 8 o'clock at night if I want to. So that's really, that's kind of the mentality of the Gen Z and the millennial generation in particular has been focused on how can I don't want to have to talk to somebody as I go through a property and talk about the weather as we walk down the hallway to look at the model unit. And so that's how I think the evolution of self-guided tours has come into being. And we really saw it at both NAA and at OpTech last year. There were breakout sessions around self-guided tours, and it's really become a hot topic in the industry.
And how has the industry adapted? Obviously, they've got the recognition and the interest. How has that application actually taken place?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think anybody who works in multifamily housing understands very clearly that this industry is not always on the forefront in the cutting edge of technology and adapting to change in particular. So, this whole concept of self-guided tours has been something that it's been interesting because it's a nut that I think the industry has been trying to crack for a number of years, because leasing agents can be a very difficult staff to maintain. there tends to be a high turnover in this role of the leasing agent, even though it's one of the most important roles at a property. So you usually either have a leasing agent. If you have a good leasing agent, they're going to get promoted, or they're going to move on to a different property, or they're going to move out of the industry altogether. And so the turnover has really driven the need. But adapting to the new technology, it's interesting because the founder, along with myself, Georgiana Oliver, and I, we talk about how the industry for years really tried to close. We've tried to talk about keeping people out of these properties, and around security and all of that. So how do we keep people out of the properties? And now we're in the industry where we're trying to open these up. And particularly in this global pandemic that we are in with COVID-19, I think that has really pushed the industry to look at, the buzz was starting before this all happened, but with COVID, the hot new term, if you watch any commercial right now on TV, they're talking about, here's our way for contactless delivery of services. So COVID has really push that to the forefront in terms of our industry as well. We still need to lease apartments. We still have apartments that are going to become vacant. We're still building apartments that are in lease up. So we still need to find ways in this environment, as well as after this pandemic hopefully comes to an end sooner rather than later, looking at options that allow that. So I think using technology, as technology advances, the industry has to keep pace with that, and using that technology to provide self-service, because that's what the current generation is looking for. But now with COVID, it's even stretched beyond the current generation, and it's really about how do we take what we already have in place and expand it to a broader market.
So let's talk some more about that contactless experience. What are some of the things that should be considered to make it truly contactless?
Yeah, and so if we want to show, we actually prepared a slide that really takes into account what needs to happen for a successful contactless leasing experience. And so, I think that it's really important to look at, and what we have listed here is that self-guided tours is more than just opening a door. There are so many methods now for opening doors, and whether that's for leasing or whether that's for my pet walker, my delivery.
Yeah.
So there have been methods out there for years in terms of here's how we open the doors to let non-residents into our properties. And so that's been around forever. But what's going to make a successful self-guided tour for a prospect is really using technology. Like we talked about here, it really, what's important to do is once you get the person in the door, what's their experience going to be once they're there? So let's actually back up for a minute. And so how do we even know that we should be letting them in the door to begin with? So if we're talking specifically, what we want to have is that we want to have some type of verification process. So it's really important, most of the vendors that are in this space really go through both an ID verification process as well as a credit card verification process. So my product in particular, Tour24, has that capability. So and most of them have this capability, but what we do specifically is that the prospect has to take a picture of the front and back of a government issued ID. They then take a selfie. We have a third-party verifier that verifies that is a actual current valid ID, and it is and the selfie matches the picture that is on that ID. So we're verifying that ID, and then we're collecting credit card information. And what this does is that this weeds out anybody who might have ulterior motives. So you don't want somebody coming into your property who is really not there to lease an apartment, but they're just trying to have access to maybe to the pool or to a gym, even though there's oftentimes additional security measures to get into those amenities. So So what we will see is that you'll see that drop off point in terms of, okay, well, if I actually have to provide this information, then I'm not going to actually go through. So, so having that, and then having a calendar scheduling appointment. So, and having the flexibility along with that, I think is incredibly important. So we, there are clients out there that want to provide only after hours touring capabilities. Say they're closed on Sunday, they want to open up their property to have self-guided tours take place on Sunday. So having that flexibility is also incredibly important, and being able to change that. And so what's great about self-guided tours is, let's say you actually have a leasing agent on site, from 9 until 5, but that leasing agent calls in sick for on a Wednesday, and you don't normally offer self-guided tours. A good self-guided tour platform should allow that property manager to go on and turn on the self-guided tours for that day, and not miss out on that traffic that could be walking up to the property that day. Because I think we've all seen where we've approached leasing offices and they have the clock. They have, staff will be back, at 9 a.m. tomorrow. So you're missing that traffic that's ready to tour an apartment right there. So having the flexibility to schedule at a certain time, but also if a need comes up at any point in time. And I think that's been incredibly important in the current environment, because we had clients that were only using it after hours or on weekends when their leasing office was closed. Well, now, because they're not having the property staff, the leasing staff on site as much as they have in the past, some clients have gone to basically everything is now self-guided. And so again, going back to that contactless environment. So that's getting them in, that's getting them up to the point where we can get them in the door. But once they're in the door, then how do we create a curated experience that matches if they were there with a leasing agent? So it's important to have basically a curated tour that guides them through the building, if that's what you want. Some properties now, have taken it to the self-guided tours, getting them in the building, getting them to the model unit, and getting them out, because of the risk and the liability and the exposure to having somebody wander around their property. But let's talk about kind of a non-COVID world. If hopefully we get to that point at some point in time. Again, you want to be able to, you have these great amenities, you want to be able to show them off. So once I get the prospect in the door, having a curated tour through technology, through a mobile app, that guides them to the pool, that guides them to the gym, that guides them to the spectacular view up on the roof, and gives them information around that. It's very similar, if anybody has taken a curated tour of a museum, it's a very similar concept. Rather than talking about, the Mona Lisa, we're talking about this amazing rooftop deck. So it's building that experience into the prospects, and then it's tracking them building. So you'll see how after the all-in solution, we have the geolocator beacons. And so what happens with our particular product is that we have beacons that are placed along the tour path. So those beacons hit the app. So those, they are tracked along the tour path. So this is great on a couple different levels. It's great so that we know where the prospect is, and we know when they've left the building, because that final beacon has pinged when they exit the building. So we know that they left the building when they were scheduled to leave the building. But also, this is really great data for that is provided back to the on-site staff. So if everybody is skipping the gym, or I shouldn't say everybody, but the majority of people are skipping the gym, or they're only spending a minute at the gym and they're moving on to the next amenity, that gives the staff feedback in terms of, okay, maybe we want to, when we're looking at our capital budget, we want to look at renovations for next year. We want to spend some more time improving those particular amenities. So it provides information more than just tracking, but it also is providing information in terms of what's important to these prospects. Are they skipping the pool? Are they skipping the gym? Where are they spending their time when they're actually on site? having more of marketing and putting it out there is also incredibly important. So it's really those processes that really created a successful online experience, or I'm sorry, self-guided experience.
So a lot of great information for the operator as well as for the prospective tenant. And regarding the prospective residents, are they able to get real-time answers to their questions while on a tour? What do they do with their questions?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And so it really should be. So again, when you're looking at how do you provide a curated experience, it's really important, I think, to spend some time with using technology and how do you build technology. So, whenever we're on property websites now, the chat bots pop up immediately and saying, hi, how can I answer any questions for you? We need to have that same technology built into the self-guided tour technology. So the mobile app should be able to have basically that chat bot pop up. And hey, if you have a question about, once you're in the model unit, what are the different options for my granite countertops? Any questions that a prospect might have that they could then ask in real time is incredibly important. But if not in real time, then certainly what we want to do is that we want to have the opportunity for them to contact the leasing staff should they have additional follow-up questions. Obviously, the leasing staff will want to follow up at the end of a tour, but during the tour, like it's as simple as putting a link into your mobile platform that allows you to click on a button and either call the leasing office and ask a question while I'm on the tour. If it's after hours, maybe send an email directly from that. And then any good self-guided tour application should, at the end of a tour, really connect them with the online leasing application. So what we really want to do is, okay, you've done it, you've toured the building, are you now ready to lease? And so obviously everybody has online leasing applications now. So the very end of the tour that's your call to action. So your call to action is, okay, now I'm ready to lease this apartment. So here's my way that I can begin that process.
Okay, and as you're setting up the tour itself, what's your best advice to make that successful and get the prospect's interest?
Sure, that's a great question. So essentially, even though we talk about how self-guided tours are more than just opening doors, obviously access is a crucial part of a successful self-guided tour. So you want to have a comprehensive access plan that gets them into the front door, and then gets them to, so if we're touring amenities, how are we able to view those amenities, and what access considerations do we have to have for those amenities, and using smart lock technologies that allow for that to happen. So, if we're talking about a new development, we talk to, builders all the time and architects all the time about, if you're building a new building and you're wanting to offer self-guided tours, think about where those amenities are placed and how if I want a prospect touring my building, let's make it as easy as possible for those prospects to get to those amenities. And so particularly, let's say like a gym. If I want to be able to show off the gym but don't want to have to provide access into the gym, then building a glass door or building a glass, making sure that I can, as a prospect, be able to look from the outside to view that gym and to view the equipment. And it's the same way in terms of what types of locks are you putting on your door. So particularly in a new development, smart locks are becoming more and more the common standard. And so how do we work with smart lock technology to give access to a model unit? And then the other thing to think about there is really the model versus the vacant unit. Our ideal client does have a model unit because it's a very direct path from the front door to a model unit. And then the technology is always placed on that model unit. Now, vacant units are more challenging, but certainly a good self-guided tour platform would allow you to show vagrants in addition to models, but these are all considerations. And so thinking about the tour path and making and really creating the tour path from the perspective of the resident. You want them to be able to get into everything that you want to see very easily, and then to get back out very easily. And then also that lessens your concerns around security on site. So the operators don't have to be so secure, don't have to be as concerned about security. Well, obviously we're always going to be concerned about security, but if there's a direct, easy path for prospects to follow, there's less likelihood that they're going to wander from that path.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest challenge for the marketplace?
That it's interesting because I would say the biggest challenge to date has just been product exposure. You know, self-guided touring is really a new concept in multifamily housing. And when I talk to people about what I do and what our product is, they're fascinated that this even exists. And I have so many people say, oh, I wish this was around when I was searching for an apartment, because I kept having to leave my job at 5 o'clock for my 5:30 guided tour with a leasing agent. And so just knowing that this even is available and then it's out there, and really kind of getting the property staff invested in essentially we have two options now. So if I'm a prospect and I call into the leasing center, we have two options now for you to tour. You can come in with a guide for a guided tour, once those are able to happen in our current state. But also, if you wanted to come in at 7 o'clock tonight, you have the option for a self-guided tour. So the product exposure, it has been one of the challenges, but it's becoming more and more of, because COVID has really kind of talked about creating these contactless experiences. It really has been a really good tool for that. In terms of the only good tool I would say from this pandemic, at least in our industry, is at least creating that marketing. And so in being able to overcome those challenges of putting the message out there. You can tour on your own, and it's easier to do so.
So getting that word out there so people know that's a possibility. I could see how that could even encourage them to want to look at your building versus another one if they see it's easier for them to get into that and look around.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, really the concept, the pie in the sky ideal is, that prospects are going to really be looking at that as an option for selecting where they're even going to spend their time. So I'm only going to look at these properties that offer self-guided tours as an option. Anybody that doesn't, I'm not interested in actually spending the time touring those properties.
Yeah. Overall, though, for the apartment owner and operator, what would you say is the measure of success when they're implementing self-guided tours?
Well, we're always talked to. I'm always asked the question about conversion rates. So what is the conversion rate of tours, of self-guided tours to actual leases? And so in our statistics for our particular product, we're averaging around a 30%, between a 30 to 33% conversion rate of tours to leases. And so that's actually, better than the industry average for guided tours. So a good leasing agent has a closing ratio of around 25 to 28%. So, our standard line is that more tours equals more leases. So, and we're also weeding out the those that are just going to waste your time. So obviously, so it's, we were super excited that our very first self-guided tour resulted in a lease for our pilot property. So the staff still has to close. So we're providing the hot prospects, but it's up to the staff. The leasing staff is still important in terms of following up with that resident to close that lease.
Okay, let's turn now to some questions from the audience. First of all, you talked some earlier about smart locks and entry doors, but I'd like to go back to that subject based on this question. which is how do you let prospects in if you have security doors for your buildings? Do you really need to shift to that smart lock technology in order to make this possible?
Right. I mean, I can talk about it. I mean, so our particular product integrates with the with basically all the front door access systems. So whether it's Door King or whether it's Butterfly MX, Brevo. So we have we in particular our product has integrations that get them in through the front door, but also only get them in the front door during their scheduled tour time. So when I schedule a self-guided tour and I've scheduled my tour from 1 to 1:30 tomorrow, if I go back at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, that is not going, that access code that I'm given is not going to let me back in the door. So we have integrations with the major front door front door access systems out there, but also we can do smart lock boxes. So smart lock boxes operate the same way. So if you wanted to have a smart lock box that only allows access to get into that smart lock box, to get that key fob to get them in the front during their scheduled tour, I can do that.
So you don't necessarily have to change the locks on your door. There's other alternatives that work with this.
Yes. So what you should consider when you're looking at self-guided tour providers, can they integrate with my current system? If they can't integrate with my current system, what options do I have for getting them into the building?
Okay. And along those lines, is this a standalone product or can it be integrated with existing property management software?
Yeah, so I mean that's another consideration that staff should consider is does the prospect information that's gathered feed into the property management software systems that are out there? So our particular product does, and so it's certainly there's integrations with Yardi and RealPage and Entrata. Well as lead management systems, whether it's Anyone Home or Lead to Lease or ILM. So obviously you want to take that data that's gathered through the registration process and automatically populate it into your either your property management software system or your lead management software system, so that basically that guest card information is already populated. Because like I said, that follow-up is incredibly important on the leasing staff's side. So for them to be able to follow up, they don't want to have to then retype in that information that should already be available and integrated into their systems.
Okay. Now, on another front, this person says their company is really focused on the personalized experience for prospects. Doesn't that get lost with self-guided tours?
Yeah, it's so funny. I get asked that question pretty frequently. And so I think that there oftentimes can be a disconnect between what management companies think prospects want and what prospects actually do want. And so again, as we talked about this younger generation, the Gen Z and the millennials, they actually, the personalized service for them is to be able to tour their building when they want to tour their building. So that is personalized service. And so it's not a matter, and again, as I've said, it's still, you can bring in that personalized service at the end. I'm from XYZ property. I'm a leasing agent here. I saw that you did a self-guided tour. Are there any questions that you had that came up during the tour? What can we do to get you back to complete your application? So that personalized service comes at the end.
Okay. Do you have any ability to offer digital lease signing?
Well, so again, so what we are doing is we're connecting them with the online leasing application. So essentially, and then we're feeding that information into their property management systems. So whatever steps happen after that self-guided tour ends, that's reliant upon what your actual leasing process is from there. So if your leasing process allows for digital signing, then that's what would happen post self-guided tour.
And what are the different types of ways that companies are currently using and deploying self-guided tours outside of the need driven by COVID?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's really been it's been we've seen it used in so many different capacities. Obviously, I would say that most people are using it for after hours and weekends, and those hours can vary. So I have a client here in DC. I'm in Washington DC, and the property is right near our baseball stadium, the National Stadium, or the World Championship, the Nationals, I would say. What they wanted to do, they were stopping their self-guided tours at 9, and I was on site with the regional director, and she said, "Hey, I actually want to offer this as people are leaving a baseball game. So, games oftentimes end at like 10 o'clock. So if I'm walking by the property and I see that I can tour this property as I'm leaving the baseball stadium, I'm going to do that." And it should, whatever product you go with, it should be customized. It should be able to be customized to the specific needs of your population. And so it could be after hours, but obviously it could also, we have lease ups where they actually do all of their self-guided tours, or I'm sorry, all of their leasing activity through self-guided tours. So that's the only option. And what they do is that they allow the prospect to go through the property, and then the tour ends at the leasing center. So self-guided tours are only available during leasing hours, but I'm going to tour on my own, and then I'm going to end at the leasing center, and then I'm going to talk to a leasing agent at the end.
Okay. I think maybe one last question. Do self-guided tours work better in a certain type of property, like a garden versus a mid-rise versus a high-rise, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, we actually, and that's another question that I get asked about statistics a lot. And I just ran some statistics of our client base, and it's about, I would say we're roughly about 60% mid to high rise and about 40% garden style. But particularly, if we're in this environment where we're just looking to show model units, it can work either way. Because for garden style, there's a lot less access concerns, and so I can drive up. I can open up my app. I can get my access code to the model unit of a garden style without really having to worry about a front door access system. So it can actually work in either environment, and we actually have a good breakdown.
Okay, great. We are out of time. We'll be sending you all a notification when the recording is available, and tune in every Thursday for snap sessions covering important issues for multifamily and commercial real estate. Next week's is commercial real estate snap session from our sister publication, Commercial Property Executive. Thanks again to our sponsor, Tour24, and John in particular. Thank you again for this very helpful discussion.
Thanks, Suzanne. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate everybody attending.